Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a time in life somewhere between the restless ambition of youth and the reflection of old age when we stand at a crossroads. For many, that time is the 40s and 50s. These years can be a season of both power and pressure, of wisdom earned and choices still to be made. And today, I want to share my advice to those walking through this defining chapter of life. Health is the foundation of everything else you want in life. People don't usually realize how much of their happiness, productivity, and ability to contribute depends on their physical and mental condition until it starts to decline. When you are in your 20s or 30s, you can get away with habits that aren't particularly good for you. Late nights, poor diet, stress that you carry without releasing it. But in your 40s and 50s, the bill comes due. These are the years when your choices about health are no longer optional. They're decisive. They will determine whether you enter your later decades with strength and clarity or with limitations that narrow your possibilities. Relationships are the second great pillar of a meaningful life. If health is the foundation that keeps you standing strong, relationships are the network of roots that keep you grounded, nourished, and connected to something bigger than yourself. By the time you reach your 40s and 50s, you've had enough experience to see the difference between relationships that drain you and relationships that sustain you. You've seen people come and go. You've felt betrayal and loyalty. You've learned that some connections are circumstantial while others are enduring. At this stage, the advice is clear: invest deeply in the right people because relationships are the currency of fulfillment. The truth is, most of the things we chase, money, status, recognition, are far less satisfying without someone to share them with. Think about the milestones you've reached in your life. Whether it was a career achievement, a personal breakthrough, or even a moment of struggle, what made it meaningful was not the event itself, but the people who stood beside you through it. The applause of strangers fades quickly. The love of family and the loyalty of friends last. And in your 40s and 50s, the importance of those bonds becomes clearer than ever. One of the biggest mistakes people make is to assume that relationships will maintain themselves. They don't. Just like your health or your finances, they require consistent investment. If you ignore them, they wither. If you nurture them, they grow stronger. Many people at this age look back and realize they've spent years pouring themselves into work, chasing professional goals, and neglecting their closest relationships. They think they'll have time later to repair what's been neglected, but later often comes with regret. That's why the best advice is to prioritize the people who matter most now. Start with family. These are the people who know you not by your title or your accomplishments, but by your presence. Spouses, children, parents, siblings. These are bonds that can't be replaced. In your 40s and 50s, your parents may be aging, your children may be growing up and preparing to leave, and your spouse may be carrying the weight of shared responsibilities. These are delicate years. The way you show up now determines whether you grow closer or drift apart. Take the time to listen, to be present, to create memories. Don't just assume they know you care, demonstrate it. The currency of love is not words, it is actions repeated over time. Friends are another critical layer. By this stage, you've learned that not all friendships are meant to last forever. Some fade naturally, and that's okay. But the true friendships, the ones where trust runs deep and time apart doesn't weaken the bond, are worth protecting fiercely. These friends are rare, and they are often the people who can tell you the truth when no one else will. They see you as you are, not as you pretend to be. They are sounding boards, mirrors, and sometimes lifelines. To neglect them in pursuit of work or convenience is to cut yourself off from one of life's greatest sources of strength. In addition to family and close friends, there's the broader circle of people you surround yourself with. By your 40s and 50s, you've realized that the people around you shape your mindset, your habits, and your outlook. If you're surrounded by cynicism, negativity, or mediocrity, it infects you. If you're surrounded by ambition, generosity, and growth, you rise to that level. That's why you need to be intentional. Choose carefully who gets your time and attention. Seek out people who inspire you, challenge you, and push you toward your best self. And equally important, be that kind of person for others. Another truth about relationships at this stage is that reciprocity matters more than ever. In your younger years, you might have tolerated one-sided relationships, giving without receiving or taking without giving. But maturity teaches you that imbalance corrodes connection. Healthy relationships are exchanges of trust, support, and care. Sometimes you give more, sometimes you receive more, but over time it balances out. If you find yourself in relationships that are consistently draining, it's worth asking whether they deserve to continue taking up space in your life. Protecting your emotional energy is not selfish, it's necessary for you to show up fully where it matters. It's also important to recognize that relationships require vulnerability. Many people in their 40s and 50s, especially those who've achieved success, become guarded. They fear that showing weakness will undermine their image. But real intimacy, whether in marriage, friendship, or family, comes from letting people see you fully. That includes your doubts, your failures, your insecurities. Vulnerability is the price of genuine connection. When you hide behind walls, you keep others at a distance. When you open up, you give people the chance to love you as you are. And then there's the question of legacy within relationships. How will people remember you? Not for what you accomplished, but for how you treated them. Your children won't remember your resume. They'll remember how you made them feel. Your friends won't recount your job titles. They'll recount the times you showed up when it mattered. Your spouse won't measure your worth by the hours you worked, but by the love and attention you gave. If you want to build a life that endures, invest in the moments that strengthen bonds. Of course, relationships aren't always smooth. Conflict is inevitable, but by your 40s and 50s, you've had enough experience to see that conflict, handled well, can deepen connection. The key is not avoiding disagreements, but learning to navigate them with respect and humility. Apologize when you're wrong, listen more than you speak, and be willing to forgive. Holding on to resentment poisons you far more than it punishes the other person. Peace in your relationships creates peace in your mind. It's also worth noting that relationships evolve with time. The roles you played in your 20s and 30s may no longer fit. Children grow into independence. Parents may become dependent. Friendships shift as lives diverge. The mistake many people make is clinging to old expectations rather than adapting. Flexibility is key. Embrace the changing seasons of relationships instead of resisting them. Each stage brings its own beauty if you're willing to see it. Ultimately, the advice about relationships is simple. Don't take them for granted. At the end of your life, it won't be your possessions or achievements you think about. It will be faces, voices, laughter, and love. That's what lasts. So in your 40s and 50s, make the choice to invest intentionally. Call the friends you've neglected. Spend the evening with your spouse without distractions. Take your parents to dinner. Listen to your children. Even when you're tired, choose connection over convenience, depth over superficiality, presence over distraction. The quality of your relationships will determine the quality of your life. And the good news is, you have the power to shape them. Every act of kindness, every moment of attention, every word of encouragement compounds over time. Just as with health, small, consistent actions build into something profound. And when you reach your later years, it will not be the balance in your bank account that gives you peace. It will be the richness of the relationships you cultivated along the way. Think about it this way. Everything in life is an investment. Some investments compound, others decay. Your body is the most important compounding asset you have. If you treat it well, it pays dividends, energy, confidence, resilience, a sharper mind. If you neglect it, it deteriorates and the costs pile up. Fatigue, illness, diminished quality of life. The tragedy is that many people spend their 40s and 50s sacrificing health for career success, and then spend their 60s and 70s spending their money trying to buy back health. That trade rarely works. Prevention is far more powerful than cure. Taking care of yourself is not selfish, it's a responsibility. It allows you to keep contributing to your family, your work, and your community. When you are tired, overweight, or mentally drained, you become less capable of showing up as the best version of yourself. Your kids notice, your colleagues notice, and most importantly, you notice. A fog settles over your daily life. By contrast, when you prioritize your health, your whole world feels lighter, your decisions clearer, your patience stronger. You bring more to every interaction because you have more to give. The challenge in your 40s and 50s is that the pressures are real. These are peak responsibility years. Careers are demanding, families often still need you, and time feels scarce. It's easy to push your health to the side to say, I'll get to it later. But the truth is, later doesn't come. The longer you put it off, the steeper the climb back becomes. The body doesn't wait for your schedule to free up. It adapts to how you treat it right now. That's why the most successful people at this stage of life learn to build health practices into their routine as non-negotiables. It starts with movement, not just exercise, but consistent daily movement. Strength training to preserve muscle mass, which naturally declines with age. Cardio to keep the heart strong. Flexibility and balance training to protect you from injury later. You don't need to become an athlete. You need to be reliable. Show up for yourself 3, 4, 5 days a week. The goal isn't a perfect body. It's a body that lets you do what you want to do for as long as you want to do it. Nutrition is equally crucial. By your 40s, you know what foods make you feel sluggish and which ones fuel you. The problem isn't knowledge, it's discipline. The older you get, the less margin you have for indulgence. Highly processed food, excess sugar, and mindless snacking hit harder because your metabolism is slower. You don't have to live like a monk, but you do have to make conscious choices. Think in terms of sustainability, a way of eating you can live with, not a crash diet you abandon. And remember, every meal is a vote for your future self. Rest is underrated, especially in a culture that celebrates grinding. Sleep is when your body repairs, when your brain consolidates memory, when your hormones reset. If you chronically cut sleep, you're literally stealing from tomorrow to pay for today. In your 40s and 50s, poor sleep shows up as more than just grogginess. It accelerates aging, weakens immunity, and sharpens the risk of chronic disease. Guard your sleep with the same seriousness you guard your career. You wouldn't skip a critical business meeting. Don't skip the meeting your body holds with itself every night. Mental health is part of this too. Stress, if left unmanaged, corrodes you from the inside. You can't eliminate stress, but you can build systems to process it through meditation, journaling, therapy, or simply time in nature. People often underestimate how much mental clutter weighs them down physically. Clarity of mind often brings energy to the body. Now, here's the important part. Health is not about perfection. It's about consistency. You don't need to live like a professional athlete. You just need to be intentional. Small, repeated actions compound over time, just like interest in an investment account. Walk every day. Eat one more serving of vegetables. Go to bed an hour earlier. Drink water instead of soda. None of these things will change your life in a week, but over 5, 10, 20 years, they change everything. There's also a mindset shift that's essential. Don't see health as a chore or something you have to do. See it as an opportunity, something you get to do. You get to move your body, you get to fuel yourself properly, you get to sleep deeply. Many people who have lost their health would give anything for the chance you have right now. Gratitude for the opportunity to take care of yourself makes discipline easier. Another point, your 40s and 50s are often when silent conditions start to emerge. High blood pressure, elevated cholesterol, insulin resistance. You can't always feel them, but they can quietly damage you. That's why regular checkups matter, not as a source of fear, but as a form of awareness. Measure, track, and adjust the same way you would with your finances or business performance. If you catch things early, you can correct them. If you ignore them, you'll pay the price later. Ultimately, think of health as freedom. Freedom to play with your children or grandchildren, freedom to travel, to explore, to keep working if you want to, or to retire with energy if you choose. Freedom to keep your mind sharp so you can continue contributing, not fading away. Without health, freedom shrinks. With health, life stays expansive. The advice then is simple, but not easy. Treat your health like your most valuable asset because it is. Don't wait for a crisis to wake you up. Build your habits now, protect your body, protect your mind, and protect your future. If you do, your 40s and 50s won't feel like the beginning of decline. They'll feel like the years you built the foundation for everything still to come. Reinvention is one of the most important and underrated principles of a meaningful life, and it becomes especially powerful in your 40s and 50s. Too many people think reinvention is for the young, that by the time you reach midlife, the story is already written, and your job is simply to play it out. But the truth is, your 40s and 50s can be the richest period of growth if you're willing to let go of the belief that it's too late and embrace the idea that life is a series of chapters, not a single script. By this stage, you've accumulated experience, knowledge, and perspective. You've seen what works and what doesn't. You've lived through wins and failures. That wisdom is a powerful asset, but only if you're willing to apply it to new directions instead of clinging to old patterns. Reinvention doesn't mean throwing away everything you've built. It means building on it in a way that keeps you alive, engaged, and evolving. One of the traps of midlife is complacency. You've probably achieved some stability, career, family, finances, and stability can feel comfortable, but it can also become a cage. If you keep repeating the same routines year after year without growth, you stop living and start existing. Reinvention is the antidote. It forces you to question assumptions, to examine whether the path you're on still excites you, and to summon the courage to change when it doesn't. Reinvention can take many forms. For some, it's a career shift. Maybe you've climbed a ladder for 20 years only to discover the view from the top doesn't satisfy you. It's tempting to stay put because the risks of starting over feel higher at this age. But ask yourself, what's the greater risk? The discomfort of change or the slow erosion of your spirit if you remain stuck? The people who thrive in their later decades are the ones who dared to pivot when their old roles no longer fit. They took the skills they had built and applied them to something new, often finding deeper purpose in the process. For others, reinvention is personal. It might be about becoming healthier, more disciplined, or more creative. Maybe it's about pursuing passions you put on hold while raising kids or building a career. Maybe it's about learning something entirely new, an instrument, a language, a craft, a philosophy. The point is not what you choose, but that you choose. Stagnation is a slow death. Curiosity is renewal. A common fear is that starting something new in your 40s or 50s means you'll never catch up to those who began earlier. But mastery is not the point. Aliveness is. You're not reinventing to beat others, you're reinventing to grow yourself. Progress, not perfection, is what gives life energy. Every time you challenge yourself with something unfamiliar, you stretch your identity, and that stretching keeps you vibrant. It's also worth acknowledging that reinvention often requires unlearning. Over the decades, you've built habits, beliefs, and even ego attachments around who you think you are. Some of those served you well, but others may be holding you back. Maybe you've defined yourself by your job title, your role in your family, or the way others perceive you. Reinvention asks you to strip those layers away and ask, who am I really beneath the labels? What do I want my life to stand for in this next chapter? These are uncomfortable questions, but they are liberating ones. Another obstacle to reinvention is fear of failure. By this age, you might feel like you should have it all figured out. You may worry that if you try something new and fall short, it will diminish the credibility you've built. But the opposite is true. Reinvention shows courage, and courage inspires respect. Besides, failure is not the end, it's feedback. The most resilient people see failure not as a verdict, but as part of the process of evolving. Think about it like investing. When you were younger, you may have made bold, risky bets, and some didn't pay off, but you learned. In your 40s and 50s, you can approach reinvention the same way, except now you bring wisdom and perspective. You're not starting from zero, you're starting from experience. Every skill, every connection, every lesson you've accumulated becomes part of the foundation you're building on. Reinvention at this stage is not about reckless leaps. It's about thoughtful experiments that align with who you've become. It's also important to recognize that reinvention doesn't happen overnight. It's not a single decision. It's a process of continuous adaptation. You don't need to blow up your life to reinvent yourself. You can start small, take a course, join a community of people exploring something you're curious about. Set a new challenge for yourself and commit to it. Step by step, those small choices accumulate, and before long, you look back and realize you've created a new version of yourself. Surrounding yourself with the right people is critical here. Reinvention requires encouragement and accountability. If you're surrounded by people who are stuck in their own fear or complacency, they'll discourage your growth because it threatens their comfort. Seek out those who support your evolution, who challenge you to think bigger, who remind you that you're capable of more. Just as with health and relationships, the environment you create determines the trajectory you follow. There's also a profound joy in modeling reinvention for others. When your children, your colleagues, or your friends see you daring to grow, it gives them permission to do the same. Many people in their 40s and 50s think they should settle into predictability, but predictability is uninspiring. Reinvention demonstrates vitality. It shows that age doesn't mean decline, it can mean expansion. One of the most liberating truths is that you don't need to know exactly where reinvention will take you. Uncertainty is part of the process. You don't need a perfect 5-year plan. You need the willingness to take the next step. Life often opens doors you didn't even know existed once you start moving. The key is to trust the process and keep experimenting until you find the path that feels aligned. Ultimately, reinvention is not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming more of who you really are. It's peeling back the layers of expectation, habit, and fear and aligning your life with your evolving values. It's realizing that you don't have to be trapped by past decisions, that you always have the power to create a new future. So the advice is simple but profound. Don't settle. Don't let the belief that this is who I am now lock you into a life that no longer excites you. Your 40s and 50s are not an ending, they are a pivot point. They are the years when you can take everything you've learned and apply it in new, meaningful ways. Reinvention is not just possible, it's necessary if you want to live with vitality. The question to ask yourself is not what do I have to lose if I change, but what do I have to lose if I don't? And when you answer that honestly, you'll see that the greater risk is in staying the same. Reinvention is the way you keep yourself alive, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And if you embrace it, these years will not be the decline of your story, but the beginning of your most powerful chapters. Legacy is what remains after everything else fades. Success, wealth, recognition, these things have their place, but they are temporary. They shift with circumstances, markets, and time. Legacy is different. Legacy is the imprint you leave on people, on your family, on your community, and on the world. It is the sum of your actions, values, and contributions that continue to live on long after you're gone. By the time you reach your 40s and 50s, legacy stops being an abstract idea and starts becoming a responsibility. You realize that the years ahead are fewer than the years behind, and the question becomes less about what you can achieve for yourself and more about what you can leave for others. The mistake many people make is to equate legacy with material inheritance, money, property, or possessions. Those things may provide security, but they rarely define how you're remembered. Think about the people who shaped you. Chances are, What mattered most was not what they gave you materially, but what they taught you, how they made you feel, and the example they set through their lives. Legacy is about values transmitted, lessons passed down, kindness extended, and courage demonstrated. It's about impact, not accumulation. In your 40s and 50s, you are at a pivotal stage. You've likely built some degree of stability professionally, financially, personally, and you're positioned to influence others in ways you couldn't when you were younger. You've walked through struggles, made mistakes, learned lessons, and gathered wisdom that younger generations don't yet have. Legacy is about turning that experience into guidance and inspiration for others. It's about making the climb easier for those who come after you. One way to think about legacy is through the lens of ripple effects. Every action you take creates ripples that spread outward. The way you treat people today might echo in their behavior toward others tomorrow. The discipline you model for your children might shape how they raise their own families. The generosity you show to a colleague or a community might inspire them to do the same for someone else. Legacy is not a single grand gesture, it's the accumulation of countless ripples over time. But leaving a legacy requires intention. Too often people drift through these years, focused on daily routines, reacting to obligations, and assuming legacy will take care of itself. It won't. If you don't consciously shape it, it will be shaped for you by default, and not always in the way you'd want. Legacy is built through deliberate choices, choosing integrity over convenience, long-term contribution over short-term gain, and principle over popularity. It's about asking yourself, what do I want people to say about me when I'm not in the room? What do I want to remain when I'm no longer here? Legacy also isn't limited to family. Of course, the example you set for your children and grandchildren is central. They will carry your name, your habits, and your influence in ways you may never fully see. But your legacy extends beyond bloodlines. It's in your colleagues, your community, your friends, and even strangers whose lives you touch. It's in the culture you help create in your workplace, the mentorship you provide to someone just starting out, the small acts of kindness that ripple into larger transformation. Every interaction is an opportunity to contribute to your legacy. Another important part of legacy is alignment. Too many people spend their 40s and 50s chasing goals that, when they look back, won't matter. They pour themselves into chasing numbers, accolades, or possessions that will be forgotten. Legacy demands alignment between what you truly value and how you actually live. If you value family, but your children only remember you as absent, what does that say about your legacy? If you value honesty, but you compromise it for short-term wins, what example does that leave? Legacy is not what you say, it's what you consistently do. Fear can get in the way. Some people avoid thinking about legacy because it forces them to confront mortality, but legacy is not about death. It's about life. It's about living in such a way that your presence continues to make a difference, even when you're not physically there. Instead of being something to fear, it's something to embrace, chance to live with greater clarity and purpose. When you focus on legacy, decisions become easier because you're no longer guided only by what benefits you now, but by what will benefit others later. In practical terms, building a legacy can take many forms. It could mean mentoring the next generation in your profession so they avoid mistakes you made. It could mean writing, teaching, or sharing your story so others can learn from it. It could mean giving generously of your resources, not just financially, but with your time, your attention, and your wisdom. It could mean creating something, a business, a foundation, a project that outlives you and continues to create value. But it can also be as simple as raising children who are kind, principled, and resilient, or being remembered by your community as someone who lifted others up. One powerful way to think about legacy is through the idea of planting trees under whose shade you may never sit. You may not see the full impact of your actions. You may not know the lives your words or example will touch, but that doesn't make them any less valuable. In fact, that's what makes legacy profound. It extends beyond your own horizon. It's not about immediate recognition. It's about enduring influence. It's also worth remembering that legacy is not just left at the end of your life, it's lived every day, every conversation, every choice, every act of generosity or cruelty becomes part of the story you're writing. Legacy is not an event, it's a practice, and the sooner you start practicing it intentionally, the stronger and clearer it becomes. The danger in your 40s and 50s is to think that legacy is something you'll work on later once you've achieved more, but legacy doesn't wait for a retirement date. You're already building it whether you realize it or not. The question is, are you proud of the legacy you're building right now? If the answer is no, then it's time to shift to realign your life with the values you want to leave behind. Ultimately, legacy is about impact. It's the measure of whether the world is better because you were here. It's not about being remembered by millions, it's about making a difference to the people within your reach. If you loved well, gave generously, acted with integrity, and shared your wisdom, then your legacy will take care of itself. The stories people tell about you will not be about what you owned or how many awards you won. They'll be about how you lived and what you gave. So, my advice is this: focus less on success and more on significance. Don't just ask, what am I building for myself? Ask, what am I leaving for others? When you live with legacy in mind, your days become richer, your actions more meaningful, and your life more deeply connected to those around you. And when the time comes to look back, you won't measure your worth in accomplishments checked off a list. You'll measure it in lives touched, in lessons passed down, and in the enduring imprint of a life well lived.